It's betting, Jim. But not as we know it.
How dare you? Are you just talking to yourself?
Two, 1, 8.
It is 13 minutes past 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 27th of June, 2024. And you are listening to the BashCast. Coming up in this afternoon's BashCast, Tom finds out that the environmental services are after him. Quick, everybody hide. The 2024 Smart Betting Clubs are back, and the BashCast is back in Best Podcast. Come on, everybody. You know who to vote for. Anything but last this year. More bad behaviour on social media. We're talking Fanwave, digital Badmanbetting, the racing blogger, and pro sports advice. And is the Gambling Commission investigation into inside betting on the election a complete waste of time? We're going to discuss that, as well as some more detail and information around Smart Bash 2024. All of that and more coming up in the BashCast this afternoon. Welcome back to the BashCast. Sorry for the long break. I remember thinking I wanted to do a BashCast for like a pre-Euros BashCast thing, and now the group stages have come and gone. That's how long it's been. I haven't been trying. I've also been doing something a little bit different, where I've been doing like daily content of 10 to 20 minute videos, just trying something different. And for that reason, it's just been hard to get the BashCast in, and you don't want to overdo it as well. There's probably like enough is probably enough for some people watching on YouTube. If you haven't had enough, let's just try and do a short BashCast today. I've got enough going on. It is Thursday afternoon. We're going to get 2 more seconds in the golf this week. That's the plan. Who's going to finish second? I'll tell you, Taylor Penrith will finish second in that tournament, and Angel Ayora is going to finish second in the Italian Open, because that's what we do. We just finish second. Taylor Penrith will finish second to Scotty Scheffler. Scotty Scheffler's not even in this PGA event this weekend, but he will still win it. That's the plan. And then I want to just try and do this in maybe one take, because in 2 hours I'm going out with my wife to see a musical, Hamilton, which has got some fun music in it, all about Alexander Hamilton, everybody's favourite Scottish immigrant that was a founder of the United States of America. That's all I know. Like, that sounded like I knew a lot about it, like both the musical and the historical events. That's it. There's something about the Caribbean in one of the songs, so he must have been shipwrecked there. Hey, it's good going into these things when you know nothing. I don't know the full-time score when it comes to founding America, so I'm looking forward to finding out about it today. And then Saturday is my big annual party. How bad's this, right? So we've been very silly, and we've created a nightclub. We did this a few years ago. It's got a DJ booth, lights, and everything like that. And then I give like an hour set to each one of my mates who's into his DJing. So we range from funk music to psychedelic trance, techno house. As later the day goes on, the harder it gets, which is what it should be. It was very loud last year. I mean, we have an amp and a subwoofer and a couple of speakers just for bass, and it is a residential area. And we did warn neighbours, but one particular neighbour wasn't too happy. And I'm going to put my hands up because I'm a grown man. It was obnoxiously loud, and it's nobody's fault but my own at 11:45 at night. Now, I had mentioned that it was going to end at midnight, and she did come round at 11:45, but that doesn't mean she needed to put up with it for another 15 minutes. It was very loud. So I'm not going to make the same mistake this year. But interestingly, I went down to the Brewers down the road, Brew 61, and they told me, because I need to get a big keg of beer for tomorrow and submerge it in some ice and get a tap for the bar. And they told me that this time last year, there was very loud noise coming from somewhere, and a lot of people complained to environmental services. And the farm across the road from me, behind the pub, runs a music festival one week a year, one weekend a year. And all the complaints assumed it was them. And so environmental services went round to the actual organizer of the music festival to tell him that the music was too loud. And he had to say, well, it wasn't me, Gov. And they never found out who it was. I mean, look, I knew it was loud. When the lady came over to tell me off, during the day, the older children, the 12-year-olds, the 13-year-olds, they'd set up a face painting store. And so my hair, which was a little bit longer than it is today, was neon yellow. And then I had like a butterfly design on my face in pink and purple neon colours. So when she accosted me to tell me off and was shouting at me quite loudly, it must have been quite a sight with me dressed like that. Another thing the kids did last year, just thinking about it, this was quite clever or annoying, is they found the spirits that I had bought for the party. So I bought them with my own money. And they decided they were going to make cocktails, but they made the cocktails and then tried to sell them to me. So they're selling me my own spirits, which I don't mind, but I didn't have 50p or a pound to give to them. So I told them that, like, thank you very much, but I don't have 50p or a pound. Also, because they're kids, they were making just ridiculously strong, like half pints worth of 40% spirits as well. But they then went and found my gambling wallet, which has a number of £20 notes, £50 notes, and lots of pounds and £2 coins in it. And then they came back and they handed the money out to people to give to them so that they could have some sort of income from the cocktails that they were making. And they found my wallet and they gave the money to me. And I didn't know it was my own money. And I gave it to them thinking it was their money. And I bought a cocktail for £20, which was made out of spirits that I'd bought from the shop. They are very young children, by the way. I'm not casting any aspersions this year. So that's going on Saturday. So let's get all of this done. I'm going to start off by talking about the Smart Betting Club Awards, which returns, as it always does, at this time of the year, along with Shy Guy, my summer party. And I was clever enough to bring up last year's awards because I wanted to see where we fared last year and where we maybe want to think about being this year. So horse racing tipster, we were number 1 2 years ago. Last year we were beaten by No Photo Needed. The mysterious maestro had some memorable long-priced winners along the way, and 18.8% voted for No Photo Needed. Now, I don't know too much about No Photo Needed, but they averaged 3 to 4 tips a day, and they had a good 6-month period last year, and so on and so forth. So good for them. But let's see if we can overtake them this year. I mean, we have hundreds of bets per day, and they have 3 to 4. And so variance plays a big thing in that, I would imagine, especially at long odds. And we were only 1% of the vote behind them last year. 18% went to No Photo Needed, 17% this year. So at least horse racing is one of those things that isn't, down to bouts of variance. Unlike golf, weekly golf value was the best sports tipster and the best golf tipster. I truly don't believe that we're going to be this year because we've had 12 months that have been flatlined. I think we're running at like either +1 or -1% ROI. And again, last weekend it was Tom King and Scotty Scheffler in a playoff. Now, we've won enough of our playoffs that I'm not moaning about a bad beat in a playoff. I'm just saying the difference in ROI of just hitting that winner, one of the winners out of the seconds, is quite substantial. It's so many seconds this year. I did want to have a look at it, but I haven't. My impression is something along the lines of 12 or 13 seconds compared to the 4 winners that we've had. So that's a little bit rough. Let's see if we can get the data up for this year in terms of how we're comparing with strike rate winners compared to previous years. Now, nothing's changed, and this has been asked. It has been asked what has changed in the code and the algorithms. Could we turn it back? I mean, that's changed both in been asked both in golf and it's been asked in horse racing, and it's generally asked after a bout of variance. I mean, we never ever get asked to supply bet histories for the virtual doubles during periods when the virtual doubles win, because they're just accepted. But when they're losing, I can understand why bet histories are asked for. We don't have one for virtual doubles, by the way, because we don't maintain a complete picture. So 2024, the ones that we've put up on the site are at plus 3%. I think the ones that are at weekly golf value are at minus 1% because they're slightly different. But in 54 tournaments, we've had 4 winners, and that's it. So 4 winners out of 445 bets. So we are running there at about 1 winner for every 111 bets. And that compares to last year, 1 winner every 54 bets. The year before, 1 winner after 42 bets. The year before, 1 winner after 49 bets. So after 445 bets this year, we are running at less than half the strike rate of winners of previous years. Of course we are. 54 tournaments is not a large sample size. And when Scotty Scheffler bloody wins them all, what are we going to do? So I think Sports Tipster and Golf Tipster is going to be at the mercy of results, and we haven't lost money, but we haven't made as much money as we would. So I don't expect to be sort of faring so well. One interesting one I would say is best betting data resource is interesting. Last year we were one behind Predictology. We put a lot of work into the data resource side, and it was something that I wanted to aim for this year. Now, I don't think we can reach the volume of information that GGs and Timeform have. Timeform really is an excellent resource, one that I use myself. I hope to catch and overtake Predictology. And so if you're betting anything, or you're voting for anything, that might be a good one to vote for us, but only if you think so. I don't want to tell people what to vote for. I mean, it's the cheesiest thing ever when you see that somebody is nominated for a category and then they ask for a vote. People are going to vote for who they vote for, except for the people that manage to get bots to send in votes. So that's always quite cheesy. Best betting podcast. Last year it was a GG Weekend Watch. Then, or was it? Actually, maybe there was. I'll tell you what, it was one of the following. It was either that, Upping the Ante, Bar Steward's Inquiry, or Betting Only Better. And I won't tell you why. I don't know who won that. We'll just move on quite quickly. Golf Betting System Podcast, Betting Only Better Football, FTS BetSlip were in there. Matchbook Football Podcast came 7th, something like that. Pro Bet Podcast. The Sweet Spot got 3%. Matchbook Racing Podcast got 2%. And the BashCast got... Oh, the BashCast wasn't nominated last year. Ah. Right. That hasn't worked, does it? It's not quite as smooth, that, as when I'm doing it just audio only. And that's because when I'm doing it just audio only, I have the ability to stop, edit, and go back whereas on video that's impossible. So, but no, we weren't nominated. I think it's fair because there's a lot of like bookie bashing only content in here, and if you're not a bookie bashing member, you probably don't understand some of the tools and edges that I'm talking about on the BashCast. I also spend a lot of the BashCast talking about summer parties and things going wrong with magic mushrooms during parents' evening, which might not necessarily go, hand in hand with the betting podcast contenders. But having said that, so 2 years ago we were nominated. I think we finished last. I honestly don't remember. We didn't finish in the top 3, I know that. And so I don't think we finished 4th. I'm pretty sure from memory we finished last. So this year we are up against, because Smart Betting Club have just tweeted this, we are up against Betfair. Boo. I mean, Betfair really, I hope, come last. Because with all of their resource available, I'm amazed that people like Betfair don't have, and William Hill. And why don't William Hill and Ladbrokes have better podcasts and better social media engagement on Twitter or X and Instagram and stuff like that? But, I mean, the budgets available to these people must run into the hundreds of thousands of pounds. One of the reasons behind it is that they will pay, I googled it, they will pay on average a social media manager at Ladbrokes can expect to earn £25,000 to £35,000 a year. You will end up earning more going and working behind the till at your local Aldi. And you must think, if Ladbrokes had a successful social media marketing campaign where people actually liked them, then they might start gaining some traction. I think a lot of Ladbrokes' focus is on the BetMGM brand because that's a little bit cooler. They've got Chris Rock. It's new. It's maybe not as stuck in the past as Ladbrokes and Coral and their acquisition, their merger. I know a lot of people would prefer to go to somewhere like a BetMGM, especially if they're a recreational player, But look what Paddy Power did. Paddy Power pretty much built their brand from being a little bit edgy, from being a little bit funny, from being a bit amusing, and their Twitter and their social media is by and far and large a way better than anyone else because they're able to take risks, but none of the rest of them can. I think there's almost a thing where they're trying to say, don't even try and be funny because it doesn't come off well. Ladbrokes, I think years ago, they had that tweet about the darts presenter, whose name escapes me, but it was Dave something, the darts presenter. Dave Clark, and he has an unfortunate illness, Parkinson's. He was diagnosed with in 2011, and Ladbrokes tweeted out something like, Dave Clark looks like he's Dave Clark looks like he's caught the whiff of something nasty and wants to murder the person who caused it. And they had a picture of his face, which has also obviously lost control of a lot of the muscles on there. I had a friend who was in his 30s who got Parkinson's, and it was the saddest thing ever. Towards the end of his life, and he unfortunately passed away in lockdown when we couldn't even bloody see each other and support each other, which one of the reasons I get very angry about what happened in lockdown was the demise of my buddy Carl and how nobody could sort of see him towards the last few months. And of course he would have been at very high risk of the early coronavirus. We may know a little bit more now. Does that mean he had to spend the last of his months on planet Earth by himself? Anyway, so Ladbrokes, I mean, look, obviously the person at Ladbrokes Twitter didn't know that Dave Clark had Parkinson's. They probably should have done, though. They probably weren't paid enough to be doing that kind of fact checking. And also, it wasn't even funny anyway. The tweet wasn't even funny. It was like, Dave Clark has caught whiff of something nasty. He smelt a fart. Oh, edgy. And wants to murder the person that caused it. #love the darts. That's like on every level, that is awful content. So why don't Ladbrokes have better content? Because they pay them 25 grand a year. So who are they going to get? Who are you going to pay 20? What caliber of person with drive and intelligence and nuance and understanding are you going to get for that? You're going to get the caliber of person that thinks that a man with Parkinson's has smelt someone of a fart and you take the piss about it, even if you don't know he had Parkinson's. So, that's Betfair. Bet the Process, Circles Off, HQ, FTS Income, Bamford Golf, Matchbook, Mark Langdon, the sports director of Spotlight Sports Group, The Racing Post, and the BashCast. We're back in. Oh, still not quite as seamless, but better than the first effort. Listen, compared to the resources available to those guys, I'm happy to be at the party. And perhaps some of the stuff we did earlier in this year around Twitter tipsters, especially the free Twitter tipsters and Scamwave Digital, who took our podcast down from Betfair when we called them out, despite the fact that I still to this day would invite them onto the podcast to defend the mathematics or explain some of the really casual morality that they use around pushing bets that are seemingly researched and profitable, but everybody knows that they are losing opportunities and they're just going to make money for the bookmaker. And they're still welcome to come and talk to me. Is it Rory Kilmore? Just send me an email, tom@bookiebashing.net, and I'll record a podcast tomorrow with you if you want to, but you won't, because all you did was submit a defamation case. And what? Just imagine a government or an entity, a corporate entity, that instead of talking and engaging and defending, instead of that, they just want to silence. They just want to get on with what they're doing, but they don't want anybody else to be talking about it. I now wonder if that's the kind of thing that you want to be doing. The only reason for that is because you want this to go on for as long as possible. And after the Guardian article, they are still going strong. But, well, shall we move on to that, actually, to tell you the truth? I think maybe we should. Because the next part of the podcast was going to talk about the Gambling Commission, the government, but I think I would like to just have a look at some new social media tipsters and what we can do about them, which is mainly really spreading awareness. Let's have a quick break. Okay, on to social media sports tipsters, which you would think that we would have had enough of. Not too much time this week on Andy Robson tips. They're sort of striving through. I think they're Andy Robson Euro 2024 tips now. But the modus is exactly the same as it always has been. When every reply is full of just, oh, you're great, you've won, and so on and so forth, that's when you need to be suspicious. Because even with winning tipsters, losing is very, very common. And it's hard work sometimes. I do find it one of the hardest things in my role, and get the violins out here. I did okay. I did very well betting for myself back up until about 2015. It took some time to get the mental game right. It's one of the 5 dark arts of gambling that we have. 4 dark arts of gambling that we have. The psychological, hurdles that you have to overcome. It took me a long time, but I eventually got there. I sort of trained myself not to be so negatively affected by those inevitable losing runs that you have to go through. And I always wanted to just share profitable strategies and profitable bets. And one of the hard things I always have is hearing people losing money, and especially, which sometimes can happen, losing money and blaming me for losing money. I hate it way more than losing money myself, hearing that other people have lost money. And it's kind of okay when people understand that it's part of the game. But there's a sort of subset of people that mostly sort of more newcomers to value betting and advantage play, who, if something hasn't won, for example, this year, the golf, that that's somehow not their fault because they learned that the previous 6 months have been in profit and they followed it. It's the system, it's the calculation. It's often not true. It's just variance that does that. And it's something that still I always struggle with is, being told that people are upset because they've lost money following what I did. I absolutely only want anyone to follow the strategies and the advice with money that they can afford to lose. And we are long-term winning data providers and strategy providers. And even so, we get a lot of feedback from people saying that they've lost money and so on and so forth. And then you look at Andy's Euro 2024 football tips, at Andy Robson tips, who you can categorically prove are losing money in the long run. And the one from 16 hours ago, the Bet Builder settled, where they got some fouls in the Czech Republic-Turkey game, which there was a lot of fouls in that, and they turned £5 into 36 quid. So they won a 7-1 Bet Builder there. First comment, yes, Andy, another winner for me tonight. Great stuff, Andy. Andy's on fire. Got different odds, but still came through. You're a legend. Absolute goat. Goat meaning greatest of all time. Did anyone else cash out? Still, profit. You are one special man, Andy. You're the fucking man, Andy. So close to 3 digits, but unreal from the goat again. No. This is the red flag. The red flag here is that there are just no negative responses, or even kind of, thanks very much for the flat rate 2.2% ROI over the last 1,000 bets. None of that. It's too extreme. And that's the flag to look out for when doing this, because nothing is ever that good. The only time I could maybe compare it to is when we maybe got 3 very high-priced winners in the golf in the space of 4 weeks. And it was just like the chart was going like that, and it was getting a little bit silly. That's the only time in like 5 years in just one area of bookie bashing. By the way, I shouldn't do this live, but I just remembered when I pressed record, I had a 125-1 horse at Nottingham, and I wanted to know if he's done well in the 220. It wasn't at Nottingham, it was at Newmarket. Well, he didn't win, and I know I had him in 2 places. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go into the race, and I'm just going to scroll from the bottom, and I find out that he was last. Although went off at 200-1 instead of 125-1. Oh well, you don't win them you don't win the 125-1s every time, do you? Okay, so I don't know. It's almost like the super users. They're too addicted to the money. The super users scandal in pokers, where someone had an account where they could see everybody else's cards. It was obviously illegal and immoral and cheating and stealing. But they could have got away with it forever if they just used a standard VPIP value put into pot. If they just played ABC poker, if they'd had a few losing hands, but they got greedy and they couldn't do that. Instead, they decided that they were going to win every hand, and their win rate was statistically almost impossible. And it's a little bit the same with that. If Fanwave Digital were clever, they would mix up some bad reviews with the positive reviews. It's the 100% positive reviews that just make me suspicious. So Tom Garrett is obviously a well-known social media influencer that I've never heard of, but I'm not big on my social media influencers. But he does have 142,000 followers, including a lot of people that I happen to know, got a lot of big accounts. And he's got a West Country accent, so he's only just going to be from up the road from me. And he says, who's ready for a summer of winners?
If you don't know Badmanbetting by now, first of all, you're living under a rock. Second of all, what? This is the same man with the famous stat packs, as well as his ladder challenge, which he does, which last time which Betfair say themselves £1.2 million. No joke. His ladder cost Betfair 1.2 million. He'll have stat packs for all the Euros games, as well as loads more. Oh, and it's absolutely zilch free, completely free. Here's a Twitter page. Go and follow it. Go and get involved. You'd be a mentalist not to. But
you would be a mentalist not to. You would be a mentalist not to go and follow this Badmanbetting page, which is Fanwave Digital. Oh, surprise, surprise! It cost Betfair £1.1 million. Guess what happens if something costs Betfair £1.1 million? All the accounts get restricted. Is what happens, and you can't bet again. And actually, just the ability to be able to bet at every bookmaker on the odds checker grid is kind of indicative of someone. Like anyone that claims that they're a massive winning bettor and say, oh, where did you have your bet? Oh, I had it in an unrestricted Sky Bet and William Hill account in my own name. How long have you been winning for? A decade? Really? Really? Do you know what I mean? But this Tom Garrett, this is an advert, obviously. But yet again, it's like he's a bad man. So, but he's got this famous ladder challenge. Now, a ladder challenge is the dumbest thing in the entire world. I mean, if you were to be possibly generous, you might argue that they are compounding, because a ladder challenge is putting £10 on the first bet and it wins, and then putting it on the second bet and it wins, and the third bet and it wins. It's the same as an accumulator. It's just you're waiting for the results of the first before putting it all on the second. It kind of stretches it out. It's kind of nonsense that it's consecutive bets, one after the other, as opposed to concurrent in a multiple. But there are marketing reasons why they do that. If you were to be super generous, you might argue that there are two reasons that we know of as advantage players and value bettors to place multiples. The first is that placing singles is indicative of a sharp customer, and placing multiples is a recreational customer, so you can extend the longevity of your account by placing multiples. So that obviously doesn't count in a ladder challenge because they're placing singles and then singles and then singles. And the second one is compounding value. So if you have a plus EV bet, if you have 103% EV bet and 103% EV bet, and you put them in a multiple, you compound the value. The product is more than the sum of the individual parts. And if we were to be super generous, we might argue that they are compounding the value of plus EV bets, but they're not. They're not. What they're doing is they're just doing a cheeky way of getting to 50 to 1. So they'll start with 20 quid and they'll do a ladder to get to £1,000. Now, the problem with them just betting at 50 to 1 is they will know themselves, especially when it's negative equity. It might be 100, 200 attempts to hit that 50 to 1 reasonably. It might even just be 30 if they got lucky. And who's going to wait around for 29 losing bets? Not recreational punters. So what they do instead of betting at 50 to 1, in fact, by the way, I happen to know that these Fanwave digital bets, they used to be at higher odds, but then like a higher odds 50 to 1 came in, and Paddy Power, Betfair, Sportsbook, traders or marketing directors, whoever's in charge of that particular operation, they got the heebie-jeebies and they turned to Fanwave Digital and said, you need to start boosting things and pushing these bets that are at evens. We can no longer be doing the ones that have gone from 33s up to 50s. Because apparently they wouldn't be able to handle, the variance themselves, being Paddy Power Betfair. So these ladder challenges, they're just trying to get you from 20 to 1,000 as easily as possible. But the difference is, by doing it as a step-by-step ladder, they can get so far up the ladder, and then they're able just to stop whenever they lose and reset back to zero. Oh, we were close. Oh, we were 1 bet away. Oh, we were 2 bet away. Oh, we were 3 bet away. In your 10-team accumulator, you're so much more. There's so many permutations of 9 teams winning compared to all 10 teams winning. It's so much more likely you're just going to have 1 or 2 or 3. But the general recreational punter doesn't appreciate this mathematics. Doesn't appreciate, we were only 3 steps away. They say, we got from 10 to 120 and we nearly got to 1,000. I mean, it's just So I mean, I hate this from Tom Garrett. I hate him pushing it. I hate him pushing it as if Badmanbetting with his free stats packs. There's the second thing. Okay, positive reviews throughout the board. Free stats packs. If you're a profitable bettor, you pretty much keep everything to yourself. If you're like me, you may put together certain edges that have been sort of road tested to maintain an amount of liability. You then ensure that you try and responsibly cap the size of your community so as not to ruin those edges, okay? And then you may, if treading lightly, charge for access to that information, for that data. And there are people out there that happily pay for it. Anyone giving away free stats packs like this are essentially giving away something that is useless, that is worth nothing. It's a little bit like the Racing Post giving out their free tips. Now, the Racing Post is paid for by advertisements from bookmakers, and the bookmakers will not want the Racing Post to be pushing too many bets that are beating the bookmakers. And so there's not a lot of accountability for the Racing Post tipsters. Then we come to the racing blogger, Stephen Power, not a tipster, but very big personality in the world of betting. He was into his horses. He's very good social media influencer, carries a camera wherever he goes. I quite like the guy. I quite like watching his content. When he did this stuff when he went to meet Astrid Wett recently, that was genuinely funny. He's watchable and he's likable. He's having these bets to kneel on the Euros. They're patently negative expectation. You can get higher prices out elsewhere. I happen to know and have a model for what the fair odds for win to kneel are, and he's costing himself more equity than if he was just going in at the match odds level. But I can understand why he's doing it. He's doing it because Jennings Bet are encouraging that he does it, are saying that they're taking bigger bets, £1,000 in store. It's attractive to see all those 20s fanned out and then going and collecting the winnings and so on and so forth. And he isn't being held up as a profitable tipster. I don't think he's pretending to be a profitable tipster. I know someone is monitoring his results. I also know that somebody very noticed that he said that he'd had a winning period, like, was it Royal Ascot? And then when you looked at the bets he advised, they were losing, but he'd apparently had a bet that he didn't broadcast out. Now, it's we're definitely treading on very, what's the phrase here? Treading on fine marbles is what came up to my head. But that's not the phrase. But we're definitely getting a little bit here. However, I have to say, it should be obvious that he's a social media influencer. He himself is, and nobody's paying him for tips. It does look like it is for a little bit of fun. Perhaps he was winning on horse racing before, and he's maybe branched out into Euros because they're on. But I don't see a claim anywhere that he's anything other than recreational and having fun. So I don't see so much the damage from the racing blogger. A little bit where he says, 5 or 6 Ascot bets, they lose, and then he said he won because he was on a bet that he didn't announce. I wouldn't do it myself, but I'm held to a higher standard. People pay me for information and proper PL histories, and so I have to be more accountable than the racing blogger. Of course I do, but I don't think I've got a problem with them. Some people do. I don't. I have way more of a problem with the Fanwave digital lot. And then you've got the worst of the worst, and this is at Pro Sports Advice. First flag. My business company, Pro Sports Advice Limited, over 500,000 followers across social media. First things first, 500,000 followers is a little bit indicative of a Fanwave digital account, which has been generated, because you don't build that by yourself. But he's only got 16.1k on Twitter, still a lot. And he's got a pinned he's got a pinned tweet, and he looks young, and he's wearing sunglasses on a cloudy day. Two real big issues I have. Okay, look, if I go to A&E and there's a 23-year-old newly qualified doctor there, I'm absolutely fine with it, because being a doctor takes a lifetime's worth of experience. Other way around. Being a newly qualified junior doctor requires 7-8 years of medical school. You know, and you're sharp on the exact basics of the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s you need to go through down at accident and emergency. In something like professional sports betting, I'm not saying very young, and by the way, you need to be generally 18 or over to bet in the UK. Of course, you can model probability at any age that you want, but if you're going to have the experience of getting money down, value betting, losing runs, bankroll management, stuff like that, then you need the experience of placing the bets. So anyone very young, you have to take, you have to slightly wonder, okay, I'm putting my hard-earned cash into the hands of somebody that hasn't been doing this for a long period of time. So I can't play the video, but we can try and listen to the video, and I'll describe what's going on his pinned tweet, where he says he has £2,500 each way on Langadang at odds of 13-2 at Cheltenham Festival. And he's at Cheltenham Festival, overcast, as I mentioned, wearing sunglasses. Let's have a look at this.
On the next race at Cheltenham, who are you putting on? Now, this is a handicap race, so hopefully we get
Hold on. I just think the audio is not going to be picked up there from this microphone. Doing the BashCast live, I can no longer pause it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it on the iPad, go to the same thing, and I'm just going to hold it up to the microphone. That would be the better way of doing it. Pro sports advice. Here's the video here, okay?
Who are you putting on? Now, this is a handicap race, so hopefully we can get a few places each way. See where we can get best odds on our horse. Having a look around. 13-2 here. Hi, tonight.
Okay, so he's at Cheltenham, and he's going and getting best odds on the horse, and he's found a particular bookmaker for 13-2. So he's getting the best odds. Okay, that's a start.
Have 2,500 each way on Langerdang, number 10, please.
Okay, now 2,500 on Langadang. I could care less. I absolutely could care less how much you're betting. You're not indicative of a winning better because you're placing £2,500 each way. Joe Schmo could have come into a £1 million inheritance from his auntie Bethel, okay, and can be throwing money over. The biggest whales in the UK are Premier League footballers, young lads with a lot of disposable income who'll just throw it on anything. Having money and throwing it down doesn't mean that you're winning. And some of the most profitable, in terms of return investment, guys I know, are lower stakes bettors. And they just choose that they don't like the volatility, the heartache, and the psychological management game that comes with betting higher stakes. But okay, he's got 2,500 on Langadang. As he hands over the money, he then asks,
How many places are you playing for each way?
how many places are you paying? 4 places, that's no worries. I would assume that he needed to have known that up front, because the difference between a value bet 13-2 paying 3 places and a value bet 4 places is almost the same as a negative expectation and a positive expectation bet. So he should have known that, but okay, he didn't.
Yeah.
2,500 each way, and now here he is cheering it on, and he's screaming and he's screaming and he's hugging his mate, and he's collected some money. It's a big one, boys. Thank you very much. Okay.
9 from 10. 9 from 10 at Cheltenham. Return on investments.
And his return on investments, he mentions, is 9 from 10.
Yeah.
And he collects the cash. And there you go. So my return on investment, I'm quite good at modelling horse racing. My receipts are that in the last 2 years, I've been silver and gold in the betting awards for horse racing. So my return on investment sort of deviates between 4% and 6%. I think anyone and the best horse racing tipsters out there are about 5%. I mean, you do get, and this is long term, you do get some at 17, 18%. There is a little bit of an anomaly sometimes that we have, that when you're betting at higher odds, you do tend to get a higher return on investment, and perhaps a lot of the guys up at 20% are betting at higher odds. Pro Sports Advice ROI are 9 out of 10. That's his ROI. His return on investment is 9 out of 10. If your return on investment doesn't end in the unit percentage, okay, then you're not fit for purpose. I understand that Pro Sports Advice have a merchandise page where you can get a boom cap for €20.99, or you can get a t-shirt that says boo ooh 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 on it. I would rather chop my own arms off and attempt the Mexican wave than wear that t-shirt. In fact, early on at Bookie Bashing, we wanted to make sure that we're not a place that celebrates booms and fire emojis, because as we all know, we'll win this bet and then we'll lose the next bet. And if we've got perhaps a 5% edge, then over 100 bets, we might hope to win 52 and lose 48. That's the kind of edge that we have at even money. So it's pointless booming one of those 52, because you're just going to get miserable when the losing run comes in for the 48. So we banned booms. And if you actually try and write boom on our Discord, Duncan, because he has no time to do anything else important, but he took time out of his job as a director of an accountancy firm and as co-owner of Bookie Bashing, took time out of his day to set up a bot that would tell you off if you try and boom on the forum. I don't actually know if there's a number of O's that you have to hit doing that. I certainly know in our work Slack, if I just write boom, it then says to me, get out, which is a custom response. So yeah, you're not allowed to say it anywhere. And this guy's encouraging the booms. And I think that's the biggest red flag for me. The biggest red flag is a guy that encourages booms. But I've heard that he has a Discord or channel, and you have the sort of some tier of membership, and then you have another elite tier of membership where you get extra bets. Okay, nothing wrong with that, other than he's just finding different ways to scam people out of money, because I think his bets have been tracked and they're definitely not winning. He suddenly casually loses a lot of losers. But there was something along the lines of, if you didn't buy merchandise, then you weren't going to get an extra horse racing tip for this particular day. And if you want a bigger red flag than that, then I don't know. Let's move away from the social media stuff. I was going to touch on the gambling commission stuff and the government, and I'm not going to make that its own section. I'm just going to kind of, the gambling commission are not going to be at Smart Bash. Do you know what? Let's make it its own. Let's make it its own thingamajig. You see, yet again, because this is live. By the way, thingamajig is topic. Because this is live, I have a few topics that I might talk about, but it kind of depends how long I go on them for. So it's always very fluid. When you hear me talk about what I talk about in the BashCast at the beginning, I always record that at the end, because sometimes I don't get round to all of my subjects. I've got to the end of here, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I am actually going to do the nonsense that's going on with the betting at the political parties just now, the gambling commission, the government, and the Smart Bash. I was also going to talk about saves, but actually let me just finish this with save, because it does come into the losing runs and how weird they can be. So we have started modelling saves. We've added a number of different player stats to our player stats model. In player stats for a long time we did shots on target, but we spent a long time just with shots on target because we wanted to get them right. We wanted to prove that they were historically right, and we saved tens of thousands of shots on target and then reviewed them historically and then calibrated where the bias might be in the margin, because we take them from the over and the under from bookmakers. We found that putting that at about 8% from the under meant that we were accurate to within 0.1% recorded against expectancy. For that, I'm actually going to allow myself to boom, because I love when things turn out that accurate. And then we added more player stats. What player stats? Shots, assists, cards, player cards, tackles, passes, fouls. And now we have fouls won, offside, VAR reviews, who knew that was a thing, goal kicks, throw-ins, and saves. And we also have a calculation for score or assist that we put in there. Now, one of the newer ones, now all of these, other than player cards and score and assists, so all of them other than that follow the same methodology. Cards are slightly different. By the way, cards is probably one of my favourite markets to bet into just now, player cards. It just seems like easy money, especially after team news, right? And it's one of my higher ROIs, especially after Turkey versus the Czech Republic yesterday, where every single person got the card. Was there 19 cards in that game? Pretty difficult to have a loser when there's 19 cards in the game, isn't it? Anyway, we've been doing saves. It's relatively new. We kind of started at the beginning of the Euros. And for some reason, a bookmaker, I think it's Paddy Power, have been doing each goalkeeper to have 3+ saves. And they've just been huge EV. Now, it's my assertion that Paddy Power have been getting these wrong. They've been pricing them up too big. Now, it obviously depends on the match. Some goalkeepers won't be having that many saves. If it's Manchester United against some lower league, non-league team, then the Manchester United goalkeeper isn't going to be having that many saves because the non-league team isn't going to be having that many shots. But despite this, we think it's too high. And this isn't proof, but it's maybe indicative that we've been in the right direction. If you looked at, they started at Switzerland, Germany, putting each goalkeeper to have 3+ saves up, and they've done 4, and all have been purple. But the first one they did was 6-5, now 6-4. But then a couple of hours before the game, they did that cheeky thing where they changed it to was 4-6, and now 8-11. It's so cheeky when bookmakers do that, because we know exactly what the was price was. The was price sometimes, the boosted price, the new boosted price is sometimes lower than the old was price. I think that should be illegal. But of course they can put was anything because prices fluctuate. They could have, it's like the same as the supermarkets who, this leg of lamb was £1 and is now £2, but maybe it was £1 for like 37 seconds a week last Tuesday. So there were in this historical review, we looked at 32 games from the Euros. And in the 32 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games, about 30% of games had both goalkeepers having 3+ saves in it. And then, obviously, the other 22 are losers. But try and follow this distribution with me, because it's quite interesting. And I'm also going to tell you when we started putting them on the tracker. Okay? So it went loss, win, win, win. Loss, win, win. Loss, win, win. I mean, by now, we've had 7 winners and 3 losers. It's twice as likely to come in than not. And then it's about 50-50. It goes loss, win, loss, win. Loss, loss, win. Now we put them on the tracker. Loss, 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 loss. From the experience of anyone looking at the tracker, you're like, well, these are nonsense bets. And it kind of hurts that they are purple meaning large EV. Because you can look at a large EV bet and think, that's amazing, I've got to get on it. It's so much more attractive than a 101% EV bet. But if the 101% EV bet is 1.20 to back 1.19 fair odds, then it's going to come in 4 times out of 5. Whereas if it's 10-1 to back and 9 fair odds, then it's going to come in once every 10 times. It's going to go lose. But you expect it to win. I can understand why you expect it to win when you see that it's large EV. It doesn't change the frequency with which it's going to occur. That's completely down to the fair odds. So when it goes up now, and we've seen it, roughly be 30% of the time trigger rate, and then go up, and then loss, I don't blame my own forum for positing the question, is the calculation wrong? And someone answering, yes, it's wrong. I can understand why that happened. Now, really, in all honesty, it wasn't every game that went up in the tracker. It was 4 and all 4 lost, but all 4 lost at purple. And you've just got to be wary of small data sample sizes in these things. And we need more data. Unfortunately, we need more data than we're going to gather in the Euros, but every line that we have, people that are Bookie Bashing members, is saved into our archive tools. And as we go forward, we are building these fair odds. We can't go any faster than just logging every game that we bring in. We've got them for the Euros, we've got them for Copa America, but we need to wait 1,000 games before we get them all. All I can say is they follow the same methodology as shots on target. It did take 2 or 3 years to get the necessary sample size for the shots on target, but we got there eventually. So yeah, those sequences of winners losers can often be soul destroying, I think is the best way to put it. Okay, this segment, Smart Bash is coming up on the 19th of July, and the Gambling Commission, Andrew Rhodes, sorry, I don't know if he goes by Andy or not. Hey, I call him Andy. When me and Andy go down to the pub, I call him Andy. But to everyone else, he should be Andrew Rhodes. Andrew Rhodes was on the Smart Betting Club. I thought it was an excellent discussion. I actually kind of got a little bit from what Andrew was saying. Maybe not as harsh on him as other critics, but there certainly was a little bit of him. It does feel like he has his fingers in his ears and just doesn't want to hear certain arguments. You know? Oh, look at that. Isn't it funny when I've just seen that his birthday, because I just googled him to get a little bit of information ahead of the segment. His birthday is just a few weeks before mine. Now I would have looked at him and thought he was a lot older than me, probably because he always wears a suit and I don't. But there you go. Yeah, born. I don't know, what's that, 4, 12, born about 16 weeks before me in Neath in South Wales. Studied at the University of Swansea, got an MPhil in 2003. I got an MPhil in 2003, there you go. Both me and Andrew Rhodes have our MPhils. Both me and Andrew Rhodes worked in the civil service industry. He rose through the ranks very rapidly, reaching senior civil service at 30. So I was a senior director. And then we took very different paths. Because he joined PricewaterhouseCoopers as a management consultant in 2001. Sorry, this wasn't meant to be part of the BashCast. I think it's mainly because I don't wear a suit. That's why me and Andrew Rhodes have deviated in our lives. And I'm sure it's a very stressful position, and I've chosen the less stressful life. But he joined the Gambling Commission in 2021 and then was interim chief executive, and now he's in charge of the whole thing. So he was on the Smart Betting Club. They were invited to the Smart Bash. So the Smart Bash is coming up in 3 weeks or whatever. And the Gambling Commission have rejected the offer. I think, personally, it's a terrible look for the Gambling Commission to have rejected this. I really do. I think it's exactly the kind of event they should be attending. It is exactly the kind of issues it is felt like they are ignoring. They are ignoring in favour of, if you like, more Kentucky Fried Chicken Daily Mail headline grabbing, problem gambling stories, defending people because we live in a slightly more wokeist culture today and everyone's a victim and you've got to look after people. And that's their modus operandi. They're not really after a fair betting landscape. They're after looking like they are looking after the victims out there who may or may not be victims. Some of them may simply have not taken responsibility for losing money on something that they probably shouldn't have bet on. So there's that edge. And the Gambling Commission think they look better by going down that route, but they don't. There's no side. They probably poll very disfavourably with almost everybody. So there's looking after so-called problem gambling, making a complete mess of fair gambling and source of wealth and KYC. But then this story arose a couple of weeks ago, which they're completely entrenched in, and I can just see them in their offices going, this is our time, boys. This is where we are going to make our name. And this issue revolves around the election that is coming up, which Rishi Sunak announced. And the election is going to take place in July. And a number of Conservative MPs, at least 6 Conservative MPs, 1 Labour candidate, and 6 officers from the Metropolitan Police, the branch of the Metropolitan Police that I think is in charge, those guys with the little earphony thing that's in charge of standing in front of Rishi Sunak and making sure that people don't do bad things to our Prime Minister. These 13 people have been suspended from the Conservative Party, from the Metropolitan Police, and as a Labour candidate, because apparently they had some information that the election was going to be in July whilst the betting markets were still open. I'm so happy I managed to time that correctly. First time for everything, isn't there? So the Gambling Commission have got involved, and they are they're doing investigations into all of these bets. And a lot of the bets are for not a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about Conservative MPs here putting £100 down at 5-1. The Commission has not identified any individuals it is looking into, but has said if someone uses confidential information in order to gain an unfair advantage when betting, this may constitute an offence of cheating. I mean, stick your neck out there. That's about as a non-committal phrase that you might ever hear. A bet on the timing of the election is assumed to be the accusation against a member of Rishi Sunak's close protection team, who has been suspended and arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. And yesterday there were some more allegations. Kevin Craig, a Labour candidate, was suspended by the party when it became apparent that the Gambling Commission's looking at him too. The Gambling Commission is looking at him too. The papers are loving this. LBC, Talk Radio, BBC, Daily Mail, headline-grabbing MPs, Met Office police officers are betting on the date of the election when they've got inside information from Rishi that it's probably going to be that. For the love of God, what are the Gambling Commission doing? This is like they saw this and they wanted their moment to shine. Let's take a step back and just have a think about this, right? What exactly is the problem here? There will be transfers of player X going from Team Y to Team Z, and some people will know that it's happening whilst the markets are still open, and they may have a bet on those events. What should happen to it? Is it moral? Is it moral? No. Do a lot of people care about whether the bookmakers are taken to the cleaners by people betting on events when they know what the outcome is? A lot of people don't think that's immoral. Personally, I don't think it's right. I wouldn't do it myself. I don't think it constitutes fair game, and I've got quite an intrinsically sort of, I'm very comfortable in my own definition of what is fair and what is not fair, and I believe that I'm a man of conviction, and I don't do things that I don't believe are from a moral standpoint. And I don't think betting on something where you know the outcome is from a moral standpoint is not something I would do. A lot of people don't believe that, especially they think the bookmaker is fair game. They think that it's okay to bet on things after you know that it's going to happen. And actually, do you know what? I don't judge those people. They simply have a different viewpoint to me. What I do judge is moral outrage at this scale. Now, a politician using inside information to place a bet at a bookmaker hurts the bookmaker. What should the outcome of that be? That politician or that account should be, I don't know, let's think about this, restricted, right? That no further bets should be allowed by the bookmaker from that politician. Should the Gambling Commission be investigating them? I think it's a waste of the Gambling Commission's time. I don't think there's anything newsworthy here that's going to affect the election. Okay, it's not going to affect the election result. It's not going to affect the outcome. It's not like a defender betting that his team is going to lose. This is just people just trying to get an edge, and not even that big an edge at 100 to 5 to 1. I mean, if it was that big, I could mobilise a team that could have taken William Hill for 7 figures relatively easily if I'd had this information. Okay? I don't think I would have, but it's not like these are big players. This is £100 at 5 to 1. I think the election has been so tedious and people are so bored by it that media outrage has suddenly been whipped up over a story that isn't a story. And what do I particularly not care about? And if you stand back and think isn't a story, those bloody close protection officers who have been suspended, their job is to stand there and look bloody hard to anybody that thought that they might do something to take away the safety and the liberty of our senior politicians. They stand there with their suits and their earpieces and their short haircuts, and you don't want to fuck with them. That's their job. Number one job, look like nobody wants to fuck with you, right? I wouldn't qualify for that role. I'm only 5'7" 3/4 inches tall. That is small enough that I use 1/4 inches in my height. They're going to be tall lads. They're going to be tough looking. They're going to have a difficult and stressful job. They're going to go home and drink whiskey in a 1-bedroom flat, because I have watched all the detective series. But most importantly, they might hear from the people that they're protecting that there is going to be an election in July, and they might go home and they might put some money in the bookmakers' accounts, and they might bet on that. And that is not a story. It's such a non-story that what are the Gambling Commission doing wasting their time looking at it? There are one of the 1,000 issues. If you put policeman hears that there's going to be a July election and bets on it, would be the 1,000th of the 1,000 issues. It may not, even if it was in the 1,000 issues, it might not appear on the ranking table of importance because it's such an unimportant thing. It just is an unimportant thing. But the Gambling Commission are now probably using all of their resource on this. Why? They're being whipped into it. They're loving the media outrage, the fanfare, the fact that the Gambling Commission themselves are on the front pages of all of the newspapers. Gambling Commission investigation means very little. They're not holding up the integrity of everything. This isn't even a major market. It wouldn't have had large liability. Just restrict them. Restrict the policemen. Maybe there's an argument that a more significant punishment needs to be handed out to the Tory MPs and the Labour MPs, but that's mostly because as an MP and as a candidate, you are actually meant to be representing your constituent, and as such, you should be at the highest of moral thresholds. Hence why Farage is doing so well in the polls. In all honesty, if I was in charge, I wouldn't even be stopping them from running. I would be getting them to issue an apology. Look, I didn't think long and hard enough about what I was doing. I thought it was a quick buck against the bookmaker. I realised the error of my ways, and I'm going to donate the money for charity. Oh, and incidentally, I've logged on to my Paddy Power, and I now can't even get on an Andy Robson tip because I'm restricted to £1.12 on a 1 to 100 shot. And that should be the end of the story. That should be the end of the story. We're now not going to hear from the Gambling Commission for the next 6 months whilst they stretch this story out. And one place they're definitely not going to have time for is the Smart Bash, an event with some of the sharpest minds in professional betting and value betting discussing various topics, which include, as I segue beautifully into this, despite the fact that I haven't got the page open. Just imagine I've cut this for a second, will you? So we're starting at 9:30, and then we are going to have our first presentation, or not presentation, but panel seminar at 10:30. So if you get there for about 10:29, you'll be fine. Actually, today somebody did say, what time should I get there? Get there when you get there. You just walk in. Man. Who's going to stop you walking in? Oh, you do need a ticket. Yeah, 10:30, sharp punting panel, discussion about that. You know, the times are very loosey-goosey, by the way, but it's roughly this. You know, Johnny Deneen, Chris Poole, Dean Valentine. Compliance in the UK, you know, Brian Chappell, Freddie Grieve, Harry Stewart Moore. Maybe, tentatively, nothing set in stone. Betting on golf, conversation with Craig Edwards and Luke Patton and Dylan Bairn. Presentation after lunch from Winner Odds. Modelers panel with Nick Goff, Bill Chen, Olaf Stenius. Moderated by yours truly, that one. Crypto and betting. We've got BetDex and Kyle Britz and Will Martin there. A betting syndicate insight, which Pete, SBC's Pete, will be moderating. And some exchange strategies moderated by Jesse May. Followed by some after drinks. Now, tickets have sold really, really well for this event, and we're now down to our last handful. I think a handful is around about 50. I don't have access to the numbers exactly sold in front of me. So the price was upped recently in an attempt just to slow it down, because we do have to cap it and try and break even. But if you're coming in 3 weeks or 4 weeks' time, my advice would be don't turn up on the door and ask to come in, because Chelsea themselves limit the number of people that are in the room. And don't wait around wondering if you've got anything better to do on that day, because I promise you this. You want to come. You want to be there. You don't want to be the 51st person to go to the site and then find out that all the tickets have sold out, because you just have to wait until next year. Right, I am not going to get into the WSOP, which is a shame, because it was my favourite story. In fact, let's just loosely talk on it. It's just I've talked enough on this BashCast. I can't believe it's gone on for so long, to tell you the truth. What was the WSOP story? I just like this. This is cool. This is a nice story. Sometimes you hear stories, and they're really good, right? Darius Samuel. I don't know if you've heard of Darius Samuel. I hadn't heard of Darius Samuel. Is a poker player from the UK. Now I'm just going to put him into this website, and we see that we can sort of have a look at what Darius Samuel's been playing. And put a little timestamp here, by the way, because normally we have the little intro thing, timestamp that there. Okay. What do you mean verify that I'm human? Does that really verify that I'm human? Do you know what I mean? So let's see how Darius has been doing. Darius Samuel from London. This hasn't worked. This at all, this website. Okay, fair enough. Darius Samuel is a guy that's been playing, I'm going to assume, because I read it before and now I can't find the page, so just bear with me on that. He's been playing like £100, £200 tournaments, stuff like that. And he's been doing quite well. And he built up his bankroll. And we've all done it. We build up a bankroll, and sometimes we withdraw that bankroll to buy things like a projector. And sometimes, well, we just take a chance. Now, when taking a chance, you probably have to weigh up all of the different variables in that taking a chance. Darius ran up a bankroll of $50,000 US, which I would imagine is in the region of 40,000 English pounds. And decided he was going to go to Las Vegas and take a shot at the $25,000 heads-up championship. Come on. Come on now. The 25,000 heads-up championship. Probably, I would imagine, one of the hardest poker tournaments in the world to beat. Look, in a multi-table tournament, there's a lot of luck. And if you're good, you still need to be lucky. But that actually means that bad players can win because they can just run hot. Do you know where you can't hide? There's no hiding in a $25,000 heads-up championship. Firstly, every single player in that field is going to be a professional, and probably not just a professional, a heads-up specialist. Secondly, the blind structure is such that you could get lucky in 1 or 2 or 3 hands, probably quite a lot of hands, but the blind structure is such that professionals aren't going broke from a bout of bad luck, because they'll just get off that bad luck and get on to the next hand. There's enough play time. And Darius had James Chen in the first round, Ian Maticus in the second round, Matthew Wantman in the third round, John Smith in the fourth round, Artur Martinson in the fifth round, and Faraz Xhaka in the final. All very legitimate, very seasoned, very difficult to beat poker players. And he put half of his bankroll up to play this. I tell you this, I love the World Series of Poker. I'm absolutely toying with the idea of going over for the end of the series this year, as I am every year, but I think I'm closer to doing it this year. The last tournament I would enter would be the Badusi. The last tournament I would enter would be the women's tournament, because any man that enters that, like, I think what they do in the World Series of Poker is it's $1,000 to buy. Oh no, it's $10,000 to buy in, and you get a $9,000 discount if you're an actual woman, because they can't stop men from entering, and some men do enter because they think they've got an edge against the women, because they think on average the female field is of a worse and lower quality than a male field, so they just make it more expensive. And men still enter. I think one did this year, paid $10,000 to enter it, just to be a dickhead, basically. So that'd be the first number one tournament to enter. And then it might be Badusi and Badegi. And then it might be the casino employees tournament, because I've never been a casino employee, and that's how much I hate Badusi and Badegi. And then it would be the $25,000 heads-up championship, because of how hard it would be. And he goes through them all with half of his bankroll, and he wins, I will tell you how much he wins, $500,000 for coming in first place. I just think that is a beautiful tale of degeneracy. And it's exactly the kind of thing that the Gambling Commission would advise against. And for that reason, I think Darius Samuel is going to be the BashCast Man of the Year for 2024. I mean, we've got another 6 months before the end of the year, but that is going to be a tough one to beat. Well done, Darius Samuel. Whatever it is that you're betting on, I hope you take half of your gambling bankroll and play one of the hardest and highest skilled poker tournaments in the entire world. This is Tom, signing out.